Hi everybody, welcome back to the Flicks of Church Forgot. This is the 4th episode in an H.P. Lovecraft special where I've been checking out the life of the man himself and his work, as well as reviewing the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society and the recent annotated H.P. Lovecraft book from Leslie S. Klinger. If you're interested in that stuff, then check out the other videos. But tonight we're going to be gathering around the radiogram, as it were, for the Dark Adventure Radio Theatre series, and also looking at two fantastic films that they've produced based on Lovecraft's works. Now, I suppose it must be theoretically possible to be a casual fan of the writer H.P. Lovecraft, but from what I've seen and have experienced myself, the King of Cosmic Horror inspires nothing short of cultist-like devotion in his readers. And as I started discussing in the last episode, no one shows their Cthulhu obsession with quite as much love, wit, and invention as the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society based in California. Now, if you want to hear a rundown of their history and their album releases, they do a bunch of music, then you can check out the previous episode. But if you're just tuning in, then under the banner of CthulhuLives.org, they pump out really winsome streams of mythos-related merchandise, such as rock operas, Christmas Carol albums, and Miskatonic University hoodies. It's pretty wild. They've got a fantastic range of Lovecraft-related props, which many people, I guess, use for live role-playing, but frankly, they're cool enough to just have for themselves, like the actual carved statues of the Great Old Ones, or the Tooth of Dagon, or, you know, the elaborate reproduction of a professor's occult artifacts and paper collection from the epic story Call of Cthulhu. They bring their love of props and story and sound together in their Dark Adventure Radio Theatre series. Now, these are old-time radio-style adaptations of selected Lovecraft works, with 12 releases so far. I'm the proud owner of 9 of them, and I plan to complete the collection at some point. Now, I don't have all of them here that you're looking at now, because I'm a little bit of an evangelist about these things, and so I keep lending them out to people. But they really do bring the world of Lovecraft alive. For a start, the music and the mock sponsors really stoke up the period mood. They've got cheesy vintage adverts like for Fleur de Lis cigarettes and all this sort of stuff, sounding like really old-fashioned products. You get the feeling as you're listening to it, and you can hear just the sounds, the vintage radio sounds, that you're tuning in to a really old-fashioned radio station. To give you a flavor, just check out this trailer for one of their productions.
Tales of intrigue, adventure, and the mysterious occult. This is Dark Adventure Radio Theatre. Today's episode, H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu.
I, Francis Wayland Thurston, attest that my knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1926-27.
Tell me what ancient and forgotten tongue it is. Do you understand it? What does it mean?
This piece you sculpted, this is what you saw in the dream.
It means something, doesn't it?
I reckon you'd have to be a poet or a madman to really describe the noises we heard as we approached the red glare and muffled tom-toms. I didn't know a man could to howl and bray and squeal like some kind of rabid beast.
No man has seen the great old ones. They are not flesh and blood. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die.
Johansson, he was the sailor, the survivor from the Emma, then the Alert. He went there. He saw it.
Did he kill Thurston?
No, of course not.
Then let's get back on the case.
This is the case.
It is a terrible place, unlike anything I have ever seen. A bad dream brought up by the sea. Vast angles of huge stone not of this earth. The men have fear, but are drawn to see it too.
Ryder, this way! The boat! Cast off! Row! Ice front, don't look back, man.
It's in the water! It's coming after us!
Here, man, take the wheel.
Oh God, it's right in front of us!
Give me speed! Give me speed!
I cannot bear the notion that this dread secret shall die with me.
Now, one of their productions I really love is the Herbert West one, Reanimator, the young doctor, of course, being obsessed with bringing the dead to life. And their production doesn't just manage to be Lovecraftian in style and content and subject, of course, but also it's Lovecraftian in its narrative rhythm. I mentioned in a previous episode about how Lovecraft would often gear his stories to build up to an intense climax, also, often in like an italicized line at the end. And they do that in this. They end with these audio chapters with very intense moments right at the very last moment of it. And I remember lying in bed listening to this in the dark, as my wife's sleeping beside me, and I'm like sort of going to sleep, trying to, and then just these waking me up with this crazy stuff going on as I was listening to this stuff. It's really, really good. I have listened to it when I've been awake as well, of course. Or you can also look at the Dreams in the Witch House. Their audio drama version is very different from the rock opera version, which is just a mental tale of witchcraft, demonic rats, and advanced mathematics. And I think it's a great example of how Lovecraft just loved fusing high concept ideas with horror. It's a really good production. I like it a lot. The Call of Cthulhu, The Color Out of Space, The Shadow Out of Time, they're all great productions. In fact, they're all excellent. So you should check them out. Now, these shows are available to download, but it's really worth considering getting the CD editions because of their added content. You crack open the case and you'll see vintage props relating to each story. There's authentic, looking newspaper cuttings and notebook scribblings to vintage postcards and paraphernalia related to the time. And if you really want an eye for detail, then what about this from the Shadow over Innsmouth set? It comes with a matchbook from the Gilman House Hotel. Let me just get it. I was amazed when I pulled this out, and it turns out that like all of the matches have been struck but one. And I was like, I think it smells like somebody's just struck it, and it really did smell like that. And I contacted Sean Branney to ask him about some things, and I asked him about this, and he said they do indeed sit there and they strike every match but one to get that authentic sort of you've just gotten it from the Gilman Lounge Hotel sort of feeling. One man's geekiness is another man's cool, and for me, I'm the other man. I think that's cool. Audio dramas are, of course, really relatively cheap to make, and so I'm not surprised to see them consistently putting new shows out, and I'm really glad they do. Although I think it would be worth them, like submitting some of these things to BBC Radio or some places like that, or trying to get some commission from them to do some, because I think they've got what it takes to do that stuff. But anyway, they also have invested in motion pictures, and they put out 2 feature-length films based on Lovecraft's works. Now, much like the sort of fake vintage vibe of the audio dramas, their films look like things that have been filmed in the 20s and the 30s. And their take on Call of Cthulhu, for example, is superb. It's filmed in a style which you just don't see in horror films these days, which is silent expressionism. And the result is a hypnotic, haunting vision of manic Louisiana cultists and the weird geometry of the lost city of Relay. It's great. Now, this is Cthulhu how it was meant to be seen, or rather how Lovecraft himself would have seen it if anyone had bothered to make a movie of it when he was alive. It's part art house experiment, part theatrical dream, it's part subversive horror movie. It's really worth checking out, and it's surprising how much scare and scope and scale they can get into this by simply using low-budget, old-fashioned theatrical effects. Now, most recently, the Historical Society have got all modern and released a black and white talkie, The Whisperer in the Darkness.
The whole matter began with the unprecedented Vermont floods of 1927. The rain poured down for days. It washed all kinds of things into the rivers, and people reported seeing strange things floating in the water.
For centuries, there have been reports of monstrous beings in the hills of Vermont.
You can't really see the footprints on this one, but the creatures dance around those stones. We see the footprints. They're real, and they're all around our farm. I've seen them flying at night, and I've heard them talking.
Now, again, this is based on a short story. It's a great story about a folklorist, which is played brilliantly by the actor Matt Foyer, who crops up in a bunch of their stuff and the dramas, the audio dramas. He's got a great voice. There's something about him. He's really sort of authoritative, but just like, yeah, I really like him. All the actors are really good in these things. Anyway, he has to go to Vermont to try and track down these weird reports of hopping creatures. It's brilliant, and the film, the first half in particular, is filled with a sense of dread and mystery, and the photography is great, and there's some really cool dialogue and storytelling, and even like miniatures for the landscapes. It's great. Now, like, hardcore Lovecraft fans might not be as impressed with it just because it has a third act, or the end act, which isn't in the original story, but that's simply because, like, Lovecraft just sort of ended it there. He did that quite a lot. He just sort of ended it where he felt like it. They had to resolve it some way. I think how they resolved it was fine. Now, as you might already know, that I write a monthly column for the Fortune Times magazine in the UK, in all good newsagents now, and it's based on the work of Charles Fort, who basically was an American researcher and writer who lived from 1874 to 1932. And he was particularly interested in strange and anomalous phenomena, from raining frogs to teleportation and spontaneous combustion. And he's one of the earliest people who talked about alien abduction and all these other strange experiences that scientists at the time, and frankly still now, will disdain. He turns up as a character in Whisperer in the Darkness, wiggling his moustache and theorizing about these strange hopping creatures from Vermont. It's cool. The Whisperer in the Darkness is out on Blu-ray from the Society, and it looks and sounds fantastic with some really good extras. Sadly, Call of Cthulhu's not out on Blu-ray. I guess maybe it wasn't filmed in HD, so they couldn't do it, but if they did, it would be good to see that. Who knows? Now, of course, there's other Lovecraft films I could have looked at, such as the underrated Dagon, the fun Castle Freak, the trippy Dunwich Horror, and maybe I'll address those one day. But in this series of 4 episodes, really, I've just wanted to explore the man, his work, and in particular the output from the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. And you do wonder what Lovecraft might have made, of how much creativity has been sparked by his own. Like, would he get a kick out of hearing the Innsmouth sea shanties? Would he thrill at the idea of watching Call of Cthulhu on the big screen? I suspect he would. In fact, I suspect he would be really touched and even overwhelmed. You know, for a writer who died in relative obscurity, his work has had such lasting power. It would be cool for him to have seen that. In closing, I would say that H.P. Lovecraft remains one of the most influential horror writers on the planet, though sadly he never knew it. When the stars are right, though, and the old ones eventually do come, I do hope that they might have mentioned to Mr. Lovecraft that his nightmares do continue and do go on. Because there is something, let's be honest, there's something about his mythos, his ideas, his horror, his gods, his philosophy, that is relentlessly hungry. His ideas simply refuse to stop consuming generation after generation. Well, that's it for this special series of H.P. Lovecraft on the flicks the church forgot. Join me again for other horror reviews, and please subscribe to my channel and follow me on Twitter at Rev Peter Laws. If you want to even donate so I can afford to buy some better equipment, that'd be cool too. But until next time, check out the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, check out H.P. Lovecraft, and also as an aside, check out H.P. Podcraft, the literary podcast, which is fantastic. And also, don't forget the flicks the church forgot.